You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Hey, everybody. Good to be back. You know what? I just realized we are kicking off the third year of the podcast here today.
Yeah, we are.
And it's pretty I want to apologize. I want to start with an apology. Anybody who listened to last week's show and that happened to be your first show, that was probably a confusing experience. I'm glad you're still here. That's something we do just one time a year. And
it's wild.
You know, it's fun and it's weird. We're hoping to get back on track this week with sort of our regularly scheduled programming. But there have been a lot of new listeners coming on board, so hello to all the new listeners. Appreciate having you out there. Couple housekeeping things here real quick. First of all, Victoria's not here this week. Ah! Did you notice? You probably didn't notice because you haven't been listening yet, but it's true. She's not here. Rachel, who's here? Who is this?
Oh, we have my friend Alicia Little, who is a naturalist about town. They're amazing and very knowledgeable and has been on the podcast before.
Hi.
Right. Our listeners who've been with us for a long time are like, wait a minute, this name sounds familiar. Alicia, you are our first returning guest on the show. So aside from Mr. Brett W. Sieberer, who was, of course, just on last week, but regular guests, you're our first returning guest. So thanks for coming on this week and filling in for Victoria.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm excited to be back and to talk about more weird stuff.
Oh, it's always an excursion.
You know we love the weird stuff. I'm kicking things off this week. And speaking of weird, I'm going to straight up tell you, I want to think about giants.
Giants? Okay. I like giants.
You down with that?
Kirk might be
giants.
giants?
What kind of giants?
Yes, Kirk might be giants.
Kirk might be a giant.
I of course, I'm a big they might be Giants fan. Not the Giants we're talking about. I'm thinking about just, I want you to picture giants in your head. Like, you know, and I'm sure a lot of listeners are fans of
giants?
Tolkien, that kind of giant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When you think about giants, giants are big, right? I mean, larger than us.
Hence
living
the
on
name giant.
A scale that is, a scale that is different than the scale we are used to. They might be, I'm not talking about like an Andre the Giant size or like a Hagrid the Giant, who is part giant if you're going to be a nerd about it. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about like full-on giants. We're talking 40, 50, 60, 100, maybe even 200 foot tall. Like the big,
right.
The big
Jack
giants.
Like kaiju levels.
Yes.
True giants who are living life on a different scale than we even are. I think it becomes kind of hard to comprehend, right? And people are like, why is he talking about giants? I'm getting there. But not only, I think, are giants big in terms of stature, but also big in terms of time span. In a lot of lore and whatnot, giants are long-lived. Mm-hmm. So giants might be living, I mean, I guess a human can live like 100 years or so, but what if you're talking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1,000 years? Imagine what it would be like to live 1,000 years. Oh, and by the way, be 200 feet tall. That would change your whole perception of kind of what it means to be in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a really different way of thinking. And so what I'm here to tell you is that giants are real.
I think I know where you're going
giants
with
are
this.
real. Rachel, you probably do.
I'm there.
But what you may not know is that giants, they're at war. There's a war going on.
There's a war with
kind
the
of
giants?
a cold war.
What?
We're not with the giants. There's a war between the giants. And, you know, I grew up in the 70s and 80s when I was a youngster. And so the Cold War was like a really big thing. We were convinced we were going to be nuked at any moment. It was interesting time to grow up. So a Cold War, though, was this idea that like you were at war, but there was no actual battles being fought. Maybe some little skirmishes here and there on the edges, but like it wasn't like a full-on war. And I feel like the giants are fighting a Cold War that sometimes explodes into a hot war, but mostly is a Cold War. And you kind of go, well, if the giants were fighting a Cold War, would we even notice? If these creatures lived
like
for
you
thousands
would.
of years, and I'm thinking about like the Ents, in like Lord of the Rings, who are like everything happens so slowly, right? That like you're kind of thinking like if they had a Cold War, would you even notice? And I'm here to tell you, most of you probably haven't noticed because we do live amongst giants. And I'm guessing Rachel has already keyed in, and maybe you have keyed in at home too, to the giants I'm talking about. Rachel, do me a solid here. What giants am I talking about?
Okay, so it's giants that are thousands of years old, giants that we're living on?
They potentially can be.
Okay.
We live amongst.
We live amongst. Are they humans,
right at
Kirk?
this very moment? Well, Rachel, I told her they can live for thousands of years, or hundreds of years, and could be hundreds of feet tall. How many 100-foot tall, 1,000-year-old humans do you know?
Okay, that's fair. I thought you were getting metaphorical with us, Kirk. That's where I was going.
Here's the weird part, Rachel. I am being 100% literal at this point.
What? Ooh, it's trees.
Yeah.
It's trees.
Yeah.
It's trees.
Yeah.
It's trees. Yes. So here's the thing. What I really wanted to focus on and talk about, which is one of the cool
good
things
reference
that goes
with
on
the
about
ants.
trees.
Oh, that was good.
And there's, see what I did there? There's so many things about trees that are amazing, but I think it's kind of like the whole idea. We have this metaphor of not seeing the forest for the trees.
Right.
And often I think we don't appreciate how weird and bizarre and amazing trees are because they're just trees. They're the things we chop down and make chairs and paper out of. It's like they seem like they're just trees. And trees are amazing. And there's just one little thing I wanted to touch on this week to get you all thinking about trees, and maybe you'll be looking at trees differently today. There is a battle going on, a war, if you will, between trees and a tree species and individual trees. And this is a war for the same reason humans fight wars. It's a war over resources. Who's going to get the sunlight? Who's going to get the physical space? Who's going to get the water? That's the coming war for humans. So these are the things trees battle over. And what I think we don't often think about is the fact that it isn't just something that happens between two separate trees, but some of these battles take place on an ecosystem scale. And sometimes that Cold War literally breaks into a hot war, a battle instead of a war, if you will. And the thing I want to talk about is warfare by fire. Now, trees cannot start a fire. Okay.
No.
Fire in nature is going to be started by a careless camper leaving their campsite going, someone flicking a cigarette butt out a car window, a faulty power line making some sparks, or just lightning, which is what the main source of fire has been for millions of years. And trees have had hundreds of millions of years to figure out that sometimes fire comes through their habitat. And so I want you to picture for a moment the humble oak tree. And many of our listeners will know what an oak leaf looks like. But if you don't, oak leaf is sort of picture like an egg shape, right? But then instead of that sort of core egg shape or that flat oval, coming off all sides of that are little fingers. These fingers extend off the leaves. And often we don't think about, why does a particular plant have a certain shape of leaf? And it can seem totally random, like, oh, this one's kind of heart-shaped, and this one's a circle, and this one has all kinds of little tendril-like fingers coming off it. But like, why? Why have all those shapes in nature? Why aren't all the leaves the same shape? And it has to do sometimes with this battle and with fire. So here's a little story I want to tell you. Oak leaves, when they fall off a tree, all those little fingers, they start to dry sooner than the core part of the leaf, which is not as it doesn't have as much surface area, right? Because it's just sort of that oval shape.
Yeah.
And the fingers start to dry first. And as they dry, because they are like little finger likes, they start to curl up. And so if you go out next fall, and find yourself a dried oak leaf, they have curled up into this gnarled, sort of twisted shape. And you're going, woo. Big deal.
It is a
It makes
big
a nice
deal.
crunchy sound.
It's a huge deal.
Well, it's a very big deal. It makes a nice crunchy sound when we walk on oak leaves. But
so
those
satisfying.
curled up leaves, when they land on top of each other or get blown on top of each other, they won't sit flat. There's lots of air pockets in between them, which lets them dry even more. Oak leaves become amazingly dry. And when they stack up on the forest floor, if there's a spark, they will ignite. And they will burn very well because there's lots of spaces for oxygen between the leaves. I have been in a oak forest when there's been a forest fire, working on fighting a forest fire, and it is not like huge flames reaching the sky. These flames are only a few feet off the ground, but when there are millions of oak leaves on fire, it is very hot. It is extremely hot, and it will kill many things in its path. But the thing about an oak tree is they also have very thick bark, specifically to protect them from fire. So we have a species that has good armor, good protection from fire, but whose leaves also literally encourage fire. Now, who is also sometimes found in those forests?
Maple
trees and basswood trees, also known as the linden tree. And basswood trees and maple trees have very flat leaves. Basswood leaves are almost round or kind of heart-shaped.
Yeah.
And maple leaves, they've got a couple kind of arms on them, but they don't curl up. The teeny tiny tips curl up, but they really don't curl up when they fall down.
They're pretty flat.
They stack up, and they stack up into a mat that gets wet, and it sticks together. Air can't get in. They can't dry out. You can go out, and those of you who have maple trees in your yard, you go to rake them, and like an inch or a half-inch thick mat of leaves just rolls up like a big carpet, right? So what happens is maple trees who have thin bark that cannot tolerate fire because they will die in a fire. They literally put down a fire suppression blanket around themselves to stop fire. So you have these two species that are literally fighting over the resources, one of whom is literally trying to create forest fires, and one that is putting down a fire suppressing blanket in the forest, trying to stop forest fires. So it's like, oh my gosh, these giants we live amongst are at war with each other, and they are literally fighting each other with fire, trying to kill each other with fire.
Yeah.
Or stop the fire. And we don't stop to notice. We don't notice that these things that are happening on a grander scale than us are out there in nature. And I think it's so amazing. So this little side note, little coda to this is in this battle, if you have two trees, one that encourages fire and one that is able to suppress fire, which do you think is going to win?
I think it depends on how many of the trees there are. Like if it's like on the edge and there's more oak trees, then the oaks are going to win. But if it's like deep in a maple basswood forest and there's a oak tree here and there, the maples and basswoods are going to win.
Well, and you've hit upon one of the key things. You mentioned the maple basswood forest. The reason such a thing as a maple basswood forest exists, the forest I work in every day is a maple basswood forest. And the climax condition, the end state of that forest is almost all maples and basswoods. Some oaks can get in there and stuff, but they will never, the oaks will never take over that forest. However, if you start getting maples and basswoods into an oak forest, they will eventually completely take it over, and it will become a maple basswood forest. Turns out that whole fire suppression technique, they grow faster than oaks do.
They do. That
and
is
they
true.
can stop the fire
a lot faster.
And once they get in, and they stop that fire, the only way the oaks can compete is if they can keep fire going and keep those faster growing species out. So when you get faster growing species that can also put out fires that are forest fighters, sorry, they're really the oak trees, they can't survive. So it's an amazing thing. I hope when you guys go walking in the woods next time, dear listeners, walk amongst the giants and just appreciate the fact that we live amongst these trees that can be hundreds of years old, in some cases thousands of years old, and they are adapted to fight with whatever tools they can to become the dominant species in that area. It's just amazing. I don't think about it often enough, but when I do, it really blows my mind and makes me appreciate how strange and wonderful and beautiful nature really is.
Oh, just wild.
Very cool. Yeah.
Thank you, Kirk.
Well, you are welcome. That's my deep thought for this week. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, Alicia, I believe you have something to share with us, correct?
Yay! I'm very excited.
Hey, everybody. We got some listener mail this week. A lot of you guys are listeners on Podbean. We're real popular over there. If you have the app, you can send us a message literally right now while you're listening to the show. Please do. We got one during the last show, our last show, I'm Going to Jacket the Dolphin, which was quite a fun episode. And this username, I don't know this user's real name. I'm assuming this is not what their parents named them. It was... I'm going to do my best. I believe this is Portuguese. Homem salamandro, which basically means, I think, the man salamander. So they said, I love listening to the podcast while doing housework. It's one of the few things that helps me with doing chores. Thank you for the knowledge and for the laughs. Well, you are welcome, Mr. Salamander. Yeah, we appreciate, we love hearing from people. Like, if it's even a simple message like that, it's really fun to hear that you guys are all enjoying the show. We appreciate, we do this for you. It's fun. Otherwise, we're just talking to ourselves. So thanks for being there. If you want to send us a comment, you can do so through an app like the Podbean app. If you're on there, you can also email us contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. But we'd love to hear from you guys. So thanks so much for being out there and spreading the word and helping the show grow. Let's get on to our next topic.
Yeah, so I have a really cool topic. We're going from the biggest scale to the smallest scale, but has had a very big cultural impact. So this is, we're sprinkling in a little bit of anthropological history here.
I'm so excited,
I'm
Alicia.
curious, what color do the two of you most associate with royalty?
Purple.
Ooh, yeah, purple.
Yeah, purple. Yes. But the weird thing is, purple is really rare in nature. Most things that we think of as purple, like if you look at a list of purple stuff in like a kid's book, is not actually purple. It's usually like dark
a really
red,
dark blue.
or a really dark
red,
blue. Yeah. And the other, even more rare, is purple that will that can be used as a pigment that you can actually bind to cloth, right?
Yeah,
for
that's
dyeing.
wild.
There's a specific type of purple dye from ancient times that is the reason why we associate purple with royalty. And it came from a place called Phoenicia, which is in modern-day Lebanon on the Mediterranean Sea, specifically the city of Tyre. And so this shade of purple became known as Tyrian purple.
Oh, cool.
And it is a very, very vivid, deep purple. It is, looking at examples online, I sort of compare it to like the darkest part of a red onion, which is a purple onion, so like deep, vivid purple when you like peel back the papery part.
In fact, when you talked about purple in nature, one of my first thoughts was like an onion.
Yeah, which a red onion, yeah. Anyway, but so one of the really amazing things about this purple, Kirk, you mentioned color fast dye, is that this purple dye would actually not fade with sun exposure. It would get more purple.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. But I am curious, do you guys know how they made it? Where it came from?
I feel like I heard this story years ago. My first gut would be to say some sort of flower is often a source for colors, but I'm guessing this involves some sort of completely off the wall process where you go, how did someone figure that out?
Oh, yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So the Tyrian purple dye is produced using thousands and thousands and thousands of sea snails.
What?
Oh my!
Sea snails.
Okay.
Okay.
So
who looks at a sea snail and is like, "Yeah, that'll turn purple"?
Well, actually, there is a mythic story as to how this purple dye was discovered. So the story goes that Heracles, or Hercules if you're Roman, was walking along a beach with his dog, and his dog saw a snail in the surf and was like, I want to chew on that, and picked it up and was chewing on it, and the snail, very startled, squirted mucus, and it stained the dog's mouth purple. And so
why does it always come back
Heracles decided to use that purple to make a dye for a nymph that he was courting, and the rest is history, as they say. It is.
I mean, look, if I had $1 for every time I invented something while courting a nymph,
you would
I'd be broke. Yeah. So we're talking specifically about the mucus. Are they extracting the mucus, or are they just grinding them up?
Well, so that's a good question. So the particular snails that were used are in the family Muricidae, and they're commonly called murex snails or rock snails. And there were a couple of different species that they would most commonly use. The most prevalent that they've found in the archaeological record is Bolanus brandaris and Hexaplex trunculus. Different snails actually yielded slightly different shades of purple, which is really interesting.
Whoa. Okay.
Cool.
That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, these snails are tiny. They're about 2 to 3 inches long. They've been around for about 3.5 to 2.5 billion years. And they are super plentiful in the Mediterranean. So they secrete a milky, colorless mucus. It is not purple mucus. Now, that's the weird thing.
Whoa.
From their
It's
hypobranchial
colorless?
gland. It's colorless.
Okay.
They do this, they use it to sedate prey. They also use it as an antimicrobial on their eggs. And then they also release it when threatened. So hence the dog picking it up and getting squirted with a bunch of mucus. So the mucus is really high in bromine and carbon. And this bromine specifically oxidizes in the air and turns purple.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. I was wondering when you said like the dog had eaten it, if it just got a mouthful of clear mucus, how would you know? Because that's
right.
Dogs' mouths are pretty covered in sloth. So the dog's mouth would have turned purple because of the oxidation going on.
Yes, because of the air.
Okay.
Yeah. So because they're sea snails, so typically they're releasing this mucus underwater. So
it's right there in the name. Yep.
Yeah. So this, you're questioning how the heck someone figured out how to make dye out of this. So the ancient, we have archaeological evidence going back to around 2000 BCE. Not actually in modern Lebanon, but actually on the Isle of Crete, which is right across the ocean from Lebanon. But it wasn't until about 1200 BCE that the Phoenicians really kicked it off into like a whole industrial scale production of this dye.
Wow.
And it was so important that actually this story is on their money. There are Phoenician coins that have a dog biting a snail.
Whoa.
Wow. Okay.
That's crazy.
Cool. Yeah,
so how they made it was really interesting, and a classic. If you've ever been interested in natural history, you've probably heard of Pliny the Elder, and
he's shown up
described. He described
friend of the show
how Tyrian purple was made in his Natural History of Fishes. And so I'm not going to read you the whole thing because he has like a whole long paragraph describing the entire process. The harvesting the snails obviously was at the seaside, but they needed to be really, really fresh in order to make the dye. So you had to process them pretty much right next to the ocean. So they would harvest thousands of snails, and then they would extract their hypobranchial gland, which is the gland that produces the mucus. This unfortunately would kill the snail, and they would just trash the rest of the snail. They would just toss it in a pile. And so there are vats of containing just thousands upon thousands of these shells from these various snails, which is really sad. Yeah, it was total waste of the snail.
This for thousands of years, you're gonna have some byproduct waste going on there, some tailings or.
Yeah, but so remember, these snails are like 2 to 3 inches long. They're very tiny, and you're taking this tiny little gland that's probably like
tiny.
half the size of a dime out of this snail and putting that into a pot. So then they're putting it into a pot with a bunch of salt water, like really, really salty water, and boiling that for steeping that in the salt water for 3 days. And then they boil it for 10 days straight. And during that time, they skim off the grit at the top, which is like the left little like solid bits of the glands that come to the top. And after 10 days of boiling it and concentrating it down, you have this extremely, extremely concentrated, vivid dye. And so from 900 gallons of liquid at the start of that 10 days, you would concentrate down to just 60 gallons of dye.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's estimated that it took about 12,000 snails to make 1.5 grams of dye, which is about enough to color just the trim on a garment.
Whoa.
Yeah. So this was extremely labor intensive,
Okay,
extremely
say that
expensive.
Again. It's
12,000 snails. 12,000 snails.
Right.
To make just
I had to move the comment in my head.
1.5 grams. 1.5 grams of dye to make just the trim of your garment. We're talking like togas here, so it's a bit more trim than you or I would probably usually wear. But yeah,
it's like the width of like a belt or something. That's
yeah. So again, as I said, extremely labor intensive, extremely expensive. And so very quickly, this extraordinary color became associated with the royal class and the priestly class. And actually, after in the Common Era, once Christianity was established, purple was the color of cardinals for the first 10,000 or the first 1,000 years of the Christian Church. Cardinals were purple, not red.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the really interesting thing, as I said, different species would get slightly different colors of the dye. So the two species I mentioned earlier, Bolanus brandaris would give you sort of like a maroon purple dye. Hexaplex trunculus gives you more like an eggplant purple. And then there are even other species of snails that will give you red dyes and blue dyes through this same process.
This is
wild. I don't want that. I want the purple.
Yeah. The most
I have other ways of getting blue dye.
The most expensive and most sought after color that is believed to be a combination of multiple different snails' tones of purple that was described as the color of blackish clotted blood. It was like black purple. Super dark purple. Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds like probably a cool color. I'm not in love with the description of check out my lovely clotted blood colored clothing.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're either rich or a butcher.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
there
are some really cool examples of Tyrian purple in like classical mosaics and paintings and frescoes of the early Roman era. Yeah. There's a really famous mosaic of the Byzantine Emperor Justinian wearing a robe of that dark black purple. But the interesting thing is how Tyrian purple fell out of fashion. And it was actually because of the sacking of Constantinople in 1204 during the Fourth Crusade. because
of course.
Okay.
I was
Byzantines-
literally just gonna say that.
Oh yeah, of course. Why wouldn't it be the sacking of
Tip of my tongue.
Constantinople?
Yeah, so it was
Right.
this huge industry for around 2,000 years. And
That's a lot
then,
of snails.
Yeah, a lot of snails.
Mm-hmm.
And they would actually breed the snails too to help keep the population.
Oh, good. I was
That makes
worried.
sense.
Yeah. But
You'd
so
have to at that
after
scale.
the sacking of Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire, which was in control of this area of modern day Lebanon, and the main the main money source for the industry, was broke. They didn't have enough money for these very, very, very fancy things. And so because there wasn't that demand, the industry kind of collapsed. Like people were still knew how to make it, but like there wasn't money in making it anymore because there weren't really, really, really rich people anymore.
And it was so labor
Right.
intensive, you weren't going to do it for yourself. 'Cause you're like,
Exactly.
it's not worth it.
Exactly.
Like, why would I do
And so
this?
actually,
like,
over time, the technique was actually forgotten and lost to history. Yeah.
whoa.
It wasn't
That's
until
kind of like Roman. That's kind of like
Roman concrete.
Roman concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one, I think they still have not figured out how to make that. But in 1998, a team
got close.
in the UK figured out how to make Tyrian purple. They
Cool.
used Pliny's description of the process and also some later descriptions from 15th century dyers who used woad, which is a plant in the Brassica family, so a relative of broccoli, that is used for very vivid blue dyes.
Man,
And
what can't Brassica do?
right?
Amazing.
The MVP Brassica. And so they figured out that they needed an alkaline solution, so with the sea salt, but also with potash. And then they had, in order to get the right chemical reactions with the bromine, in order to get the correct purple and to get it into a color fast dye. And so as I was researching this, some really crazy things came up that like other civilizations actually had also figured this out too, but just never brought it up to an industrial scale. So
It's just a quirk.
some more recent anthropologists in the 1980s and 1990s found this one particular group in Oaxaca, Mexico. This indigenous group has been doing pretty much the same thing, but not in the same way. So they've been using a species of snail called the purpura snail that
Does it
secretes
make purple?
a colorless mucus. Yep, secretes a colorless mucus that when reacts with the sun and with oxygen turns purple. But the way that they do it does not kill the snail. They milk the snail for its mucus.
Oh, I was wondering if that
That's
was possible. I heard the
so
story about
cool.
them releasing it for defense. I'm like, couldn't you just milk it?
Right.
It seems much more efficient. But-
So what they do is that the fishermen are entrusted with these skeins of cotton, and they go out in their boats and they pick up a snail and they run the thread along the edge of the snail's mantle, which is the edge of its like the foot, the soft squishy part that comes out the bottom of the shell, and get that mucus on it. And then once they've like run out of mucus, they put the snail back in the water and they go to the next snail and they continue the piece of thread until the entire thread has been dyed. And it's really interesting because they let it sort of naturally set in and react with the sunlight to turn purple. And so at different times of day, depending on the angle of the sun and the amount of sun, you'll get slightly different shades of purple.
Oh, cool.
That's really
Okay.
cool.
So maybe the process, I was going to ask, the process of doing all the boiling and whatnot was to try to create a consistent
Yes, yeah.
product rather
Yeah.
than, okay.
Yeah. And so
Gotcha.
something else that's really interesting from discovering this population of indigenous people in the Americas that have been using a similar technique to make purple is that modern folks can attest this purple stuff, although beautiful, it's very, very vivid dark purple. It's stinky as heck. It reeks of fish smell. It's really, really nasty smelling. And that was obviously would have been true of the historic dyes as well. And so some anthropologists have theories that this may be why so many Greek and Roman and Byzantine royals loved incense and perfume so much. Was to cover up the smell of their
'Cause they
stinky
stank?
purple robes.
Because they smells so bad.
Wow.
And the dyeing process was so stinky also that there were laws in the area of Phoenicia against building a dyeing processing facility upwind of cities. You had to build it downwind.
Wow.
And also the Talmud, which if you're unfamiliar is an accompaniment to the Torah, which has a lot of information on Jewish law, has a provision that allows a Jewish woman to divorce her husband if he decides to go into dyeing as a trade after marriage.
Wow. Like, honey, you come home stinking. We're done. Amazing.
There's smell, and then there's smell. And so you can just walk right back out that door.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
And so that's how a tiny little snail influenced the color that King Charles is going to be wearing at his coronation in a couple months here.
Crazy.
Well, we won't be there to smell it, but you heard it here first.
Oh my goodness. That's wild. Like, from a colorless mucus.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Oh, thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
This was an exciting journey to research.
It sounds like it. Yeah. Oh.
Well, let's take a little break and we can all noodle on the color purple. And when we come back, I think Rachel, you got something for us too, right?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Like yes. See you
Mischievous.
Soon.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm really excited because whenever we do the show, whenever I'm doing my research, there's always more and just bizarre critters that I want to talk about and that I want to cover. And there's always ones that are on the list for like ages and ages and ages, but maybe it wasn't like, it's not right, like hitting the right strange note that I'm like vibing with, I guess, is how we're going to go with.
You haven't found the angle yet or something. Yeah.
Right. And it just hasn't earned its like, wow, wild factor. So that being said, shout out to my friend Andrew for info dumping on me about this particular topic until I had to go and research for myself. So, sloths.
Sloths.
Oh, sloths, yes.
Sloths. They are wild in and of themselves. There's about 6 species. There's 6 species of sloth. Generally, they are divided into 2 groups, the 2-toed sloths and the 3-toed sloths. And these are on their forelimbs. All sloths have 3 toes on their hind legs. So it's just their 3 clawed, crazy fingers that they have.
Those long claws, yeah.
Yeah. And like sloths are crazy because like technically they're really good and efficient swimmers. They're faster at swimming than they are at walking or climbing. They 3-toed sloths. I would get more into this, but this isn't the topic.
Oh, this isn't the
goodness.
topic. Okay.
No, it isn't. 3-toed sloths especially eat almost exclusively plant material that is poor in nutrients, actually. And with all of that, with the craziness that is a sloth, did you know that sloths actually create their own little ecosystem?
Yeah. I know where you're going with that, yeah.
Is
that
know
your topic?
A bit. Yeah. The little ecosystem that is the
so
sloth
cool.
fur.
Buckle up, kids.
Oh, it's wild. So sloths have like this really coarse fur, and it actually is unlike every other fur on mammals. It actually goes the opposite direction and like away from their forelimbs because they spend so much time upside down. So that way it prevents the runoff from going to like their face. Because oftentimes they're upside down. So their fur is actually like it Like when you pet a dog, you have to pet it from head to tail. A sloth, it would be tail to head.
Huh.
I had no
idea. For the most part. Yeah. Sloths, that all being said, they have the whole ecosystem in that fur.
In their fur, right. That's
in their fur.
Bizarre.
Right? So all sloths are located in the tropical rainforest in Central and South America, where it's really humid and it rains quite a lot. But due to how slow they move, which is, by the way, 13 feet per minute, or if they're in a rush or threatened, 15 feet per minute.
Woo, slow down, sloth, slow down.
Woo. They're actually able to grow a specific algae that is only found on sloths.
Oh, man.
It is wild.
Not found anywhere else, just sloth fur. So, which works out great, you know? The algae has a place to be anchored and it protects them from a lot of different predators. The sloth gets to be camouflaged from their predators like the puma or the hawk eagle. And
so that's how it is protecting them, is by making them camouflage?
Yes.
It
gives them a lot more camouflage in the high treetops. It also provides them a snack.
Gross. Please tell me more.
So they don't necessarily eat the algae, but because of the ecosystem that they've actually curated, because the algae is cultivated and like gardened and curated by the sloth. It's not just growing on the fur. They're actively like working with it to like
amazing
give it the best life it can. They even actually pass the algae down from mother to offspring, like from mother sloth to baby sloths.
That makes sense.
It does. But it's crazy to me that,
I wonder if you could
algae.
Like genetically identify whose mom was who based on the algae growing on them. Like
you probably could. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But this algae
research
like actually
project.
Research out there. But this algae actually ends up being really nutrient rich and actually helps bring nutrients back into the sloth via diffusion, because it creates a lot more like nitrogen. Part of the reason why
Hold on.
Yes.
You're saying like they're absorbing the nutrients like through their skin from the algae?
A little bit, yeah.
What?
That is bonkers, Rachel.
That's
completely bonkers.
Yeah.
Go on. Tell me more.
Yeah, it's lipid rich, so they cultivate it and everything, so they help to grow it. But so a little bit goes into their skin, but the algae itself is actually very lipid rich. So they are able to, they do actually eat some of it too to help supplement their diet.
To get their fat intake?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right?
They're farming on their skin and eating it. It's not real appealing, but
I wonder,
amazing.
Could sloths be maybe loosely considered the first mammalian lichens?
Ooh.
Because a lichen is a fungus in an algae.
Yeah.
They could.
I like where your brain's going. I like it.
I like it. It's good. But wait, that is not all.
Oh,
There's more.
Sloths also play host to numerous arthropods, bunch of different beetles. They can even have fungi that grow in their fur. Beetles, just everything. But what I really want to focus on is
appealing.
is a specific group of moths that are called the sloth moths.
Oh my goodness.
Of course they are.
They have Latin names.
Their whole
I'm
life
not
cycle's
going to try.
on a sloth. That's amazing.
Yeah. There's about 5 species. that I could find, but there could be like one or two more. These moths live exclusively in the sloth fur and all the sloths.
Wow.
They eat the algae on the sloth, and they help create a nutrient-rich and nitrogenous base for the algae to grow because they are living and pooping and things on the sloth. Yeah. Not only that, but
so this fur is full of frass and moss and
100%,
like snails and
just the most.
So it really is a whole ecosystem.
A whole ecosystem on the sloth.
Yeah.
Well, what's crazy too is these moths, when the sloth climbs down for their weekly poop, because if they weren't weird enough, sloths will climb down once a week, just dig a hole with their tail.
Oh, they dig a hole.
Poop.
That's great.
They dig a hole, poop in the hole, dangerous. And then cover it back up and climb back up the tree.
Wow.
When they're doing that.
Unbelievable.
Just nuts. The female sloth moths, when they are pregnant and they have all their eggs, will fly down into the scat, drop off their eggs in the scat, and then attempt to fly back to the sloth. Those eggs will then develop and eventually metamorphise in the scat.
Okay.
And then once they're an
adult, adults, they find a sloth.
They fly back and find the closest sloth and start all over again.
That's really interesting because when you said moths, I assumed it was going to be the caterpillars that were in the sloth. But
nope,
that's interesting.
It's the adults.
Yeah. I'd say, in all fairness, you said they have to, re-find a sloth. The original sloth that laid the poop is probably only about 20 feet away at that point.
Exactly.
So they're not going real far.
They don't have to go very far.
Where there's sloth poop, there's sloths.
You're right. So, yeah, their life cycle is completely dependent on these sloths, which is wild. Yeah, Andrew started talking about these sloth moths, and I was like, I'm sorry, what now? And I knew I had to talk about it.
Must know more.
I had to know more, and by golly, there's a lot. There's even more than I have covered today. Just the diversity. Like scientists were studying this relationship, and they've found like up to 120 or over 120 moths on a single sloth. So like it's a booming ecosystem.
Oh man.
Wow.
It's a whole jungle.
Moths.
Yeah. Like, and again, these moths aren't huge. They're pretty relatively small. But still, that's a lot of moths in one sloth's fur. So it's crazy.
I'm pretty confident to say that there are no moths in my hair at this moment. Like,
I'm also confident about this. Yes.
We talked about the sense of scale, though, a little bit in my segment. There absolutely are things living in your hair right now.
Right.
There are things living in my beard. And we know one of the very early episodes, Victoria talked about
face mites.
The mites that come out of your face at night and mate on your face. Like,
I'm glad we could bring that back.
Yeah.
We got to come full circle on that one. There are millions of things living on us. They're just, they don't see them. They're maybe not quite as visual, so we don't think about it, but it's not, we have our own ecosystem too, bacteria and mites and things like that. So I guess it's not that unusual. I'm not trying to downplay the weirdness of your topic. It's very weird, but it's like, it's
bizarre.
It's funny that we think of it as being so strange when really it's probably all animals have their own ecosystem around them.
I mean, not only around them, you think of your gut biome, your micro biome is insane. And how much we rely on them and they rely on us. It can be really crazy. But
we'll say we are an ecosystem both inside and outside the human donut.
Oh no.
Humans are just donuts. We know this,
It's true.
right? Okay, well, that's a separate topic.
It's true, and you should
Yeah,
say
it is. It is. Oh my gosh. I have had this argument
And we
before.
also develop anus first.
Yes, that is true. We've covered that, actually.
Yeah.
Which is awful.
We had a whole episode on the anus, actually.
Yeah, we did. That was an early-ish episode.
Rachel covered the anus. Yeah,
I did. My poor search history.
I believe, if you're for reference, I believe that episode might be called "More Butts Than You Might Expect" or something like that. I think that's one where I ended up talking about the mini-assed hydra worm on the very same episode, and we're like, "Wow, we're both talking about butts." All right.
Yep.
Outstanding.
Well, that's what I had for you all today. There's a whole ecosystem. There truly are the lion turtles of the rainforest, which is really fun. But yeah, thanks for everybody for joining us. Alicia, thank you for joining us again.
Alicia, thanks so much for being here. What a fun topic.
Yeah, thanks for having
We'll
me
have you back
back.
some other time.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.